Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Dr. Nelson Ogunshakin. I'm really delighted to introduce this particular webinar today, which is hosted by FIDIC Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Advisory Council. The council is an advisory council of FIDIC appointed by the FIDIC board with the mandate to advise the FIDIC on a lot of issues to do with, what I call diversity and equity issue. I am really pleased to introduce today's because the subject matter is very topical. At the board level, board has been very, very passionate to make sure that what FIDIC does right from the top all the way through our activities really embrace the concept of diversity, equity, inclusion advisory in what we do. So I'm pleased that today's webinar is taking place, and my purpose is really to set the scene and to allow the moderator, an excellent moderator, to take the charge and to take the conversation forward. So, but before we go into the main thing, I'm asked to say a few words about the subject of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is a topical one that is on the top of the agenda for FIDIC for 113 years or 110 year celebration that we did this year. This is subject that came out loud and clear in our conversation, in our publication, in all our activities. And I'm so pleased that in the 110 years anniversary of FIDIC, we finally get to a point where we have our first female, president. That's wonderful. What we have within the diversity, equity, and inclusion activity is to make sure that everything FIDIC does, everything our industry do, that we embedded a society that truly allows us to get the best of the talent available within our community. So with that in mind, you may ask the question, what is the purpose? The purpose of the committee is really to advise the board and the secretariat on all aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion in consulting engineering industry, to advise the board and the secretariat on improving diversity, equity, and inclusion within FIDIC. And when I use the word FIDIC, I mean everything that FIDIC does, both in terms of our own as an operation, within our board, within our committee, within our activity to make sure we truly embrace diversity. And I use the word diversity in a totality manner. It's not really about just gender. It covers geography, it covers ethnicity, it covers faith, and we need to be sure that we actually embrace that in all that we do. But more important, we have the mandate to make sure we promote inclusion, equity, diversity for a sustainable and transparent and more profitable engineering industry, because without that, it would have been very difficult for us to sustain. We also need to be involved in actively supporting wider representation, which is in the equity and inclusion for more diverse group, for influencer in the consulting industry. We need to be sure that we engage the young one. We also need to be sure we engage the future leader. And from my point of view, I think this is a subject that goes without saying. Diversity and equity is not really an HR issue. It's business imperative. It is good for business and it's good for consulting industry. And we need to be sure in everything that FIDIC does that this particular concept is embraced. Today, you have a fantastic panelist who is really going to share with them their thought, their experience in the subject. But before we do that, I would like to use this opportunity to thank our sponsor, which is Bentley, for their support to what FIDIC does. They've been extremely supportive in terms of what we do. Bentley is a system provider in the engineering industry. They are very well known, and I really want to use this opportunity to say thank you very much for your support. Without further ado, without spending too much time, I know if you give me the podium, I can go on and on and on, but I'd like to introduce our moderator for the day, who is somebody that requires very little introduction. But for the avoidance of that, if you don't know her, her name is Michele Kruger. She's the chair of the FIDIC Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council. And as I said earlier on, she advised and she leads a fantastic team that help us to shape the way forward. And with that in mind, I think it's also worth mentioning that this year, at our 110 years anniversary, Michele was recognized by the president with a special presidential award. And I want to use this opportunity to say congratulations to Michele and hand it over to you. Michele, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nelson. And thanks again to yourself, to the president, to the FIDIC board for the wonderful recognition, and also for the wonderful recognition of this committee the work that we're trying to do, the impact that we're trying to make. I think it's very important to mention that the theme of this webinar being building a diverse and inclusive industry for a diverse world speaks to the fact that even after all these years, there's still a lot for us to do. There are things that work, there are things that don't work, that there are things that work in certain regions, there are things that don't work in other regions, right? But at the end of the day, if we can focus on the benefits of what we're trying to do, so that is collaboration, innovation, productivity, and most of all, increase revenue. Who doesn't want to increase revenue, right? Because that allows us to do more of what we're trying to do. But we need to understand the barriers of implementation. And there are many, but they're not something that we cannot overcome. So what we need to do is we need to find solutions. And through the council, through all its members, through all the volunteers that support the council as well, we're trying to find ways for FIDIC as well as the member associations to be able to achieve that and bring this very important cause forward. So I'm going to introduce my fellow panel members. If just have that on the screen. Thank you so much, Bia. So you would see, once again, trying to be diverse, inclusive. We've got people from all around the world, and I'll explain. So we have Josie Fitzgerald. She's land and water leader for Aurecon in New Zealand. We have Natalie Plummer, Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Bentley Systems, located in the United States. We have Athena Sooklall. It indicates there that she's currently in Australia, but I just want to mention that she's spent quite a bit of her time in South America. Well, she'll be giving us insights. She's a major project executive at WSP, and Jyothsna Amrith, which is a project manager at SYSTRA, currently in Denmark, and of course, our current FIDIC Future Leader Award winner. So congratulations to her as well. Fantastic. So we're going to move over to our first speaker. Josie, the floor is yours.
Kia ora, no mai, haere mai, ko Josie Fitzgerald aho. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's great to see our industry coming together from around the globe to have this conversation about diversity, equity and inclusion. I'm the land and water leader for Aurecon in New Zealand, but today I'm here to share the story about the diversity agenda in Aotearoa, New Zealand. As a female in a male-dominated sector, I've seen the impact of bias throughout my career. From all the time, the contractors, the clients, the members of public always went up to my male colleagues, who was in fact my assistant, when we were out on site to ask questions because he was a guy, and that seemed unfair, to the time that I was told by my boss that he wasn't going to make me the next team leader, as I was going to leave and have babies. A wild assumption at the time, and how can someone be making decisions about my life that impacts my career without talking to me? Because of these personal biases I've experienced, I'm personally committed to driving change for colleagues and for future generations. I'm a full-time working mum to 3 teenage girls. I sit on Aurecon's New Zealand leadership team and one of the top 50 leaders globally. And as a role model and in these leadership positions, I want to help lead the change. I also have the privilege of being the chair of the Diversity Agenda, the award-winning movement committed to helping the architecture and engineering consulting industry in New Zealand become more diverse, equitable and inclusive. It's an industry coalition, by industry, for industry, to drive focus and accountability for DEI. The Diversity Agenda launched in early 2018 with the Association of Consulting Engineers New Zealand, Engineering New Zealand and the New Zealand Institute of Architects coming together to the realisation that we were not making progress with women in these industries. Something had to be done. The Diversity Agenda was formed with an initial goal to see 20% more females in engineering and architecture. The initial focus was to support the industry to create more diverse and inclusive workplaces through empowerment, awareness and action. After the Diversity Agenda came the Accord, where chief execs of our member organisations came together in the Great Hall of New Zealand's Parliament buildings and signed the Accord, committing to accountability for diversity within their own organisations and therefore the sector. The Diversity Agenda Accord defines a clear set of tenets for firms to commit to, with the submission of a yearly report on how they are going and the compulsory completion of a survey backed up with report to data, with data. We use a peer accountability model and have nearly 60 Accord signatories who report on their demographic data every year and are held personally accountable to driving change across the industry. While we continue to focus on women, the focus is broadened to include all facets of diversity and the equally important role that both inclusion and equity play. What is our vision? We help design and create the future of Aotearoa. Our professions include everyone, so the world around that we shape is as diverse and inspiring as the people in it. We've got 3 strategic objectives: to understand our workforce and create pathways for participation and growth for underrepresented groups, create equitable and inclusive cultures where everybody thrives. This is about understanding what our people need to feel included and create spaces built on trust and safety, developing our cultural competence and providing equal pay for equal work. And thirdly, build a network of champions advocating for diversity and inclusion. This means we role models of inclusion and expect it of everyone we interact and work with. I'm proud of what the industry-led approach of the diversity agenda has delivered over the last 12 months. We've been able to build an industry-led steering group, hire a full-time program director, and communications and engagement lead. We launched our Toolkit webinar series to help us continue learning and accelerate our DEI progress. We've outsourced the data collection process and produced our first industry impact report, which you can access on our website. We've hosted over 25 events this year, online and in person, to connect our members on the topics that matter, to create inclusive workplaces and an equitable industry. We've marched in the Pride Parade, celebrated International Women's Day, and through schools and universities, we've inspired the future generations on International Women in Engineering Day. We've built a network of company DEI leads from across the country to share their challenges and learnings. We have 5 workstream lead groups focusing on some of the key challenges, and we've grown the movement by 10% so far against our target of 20%. To hold ourselves accountable this year, we have 6 success measures. All firms have a diversity and inclusion strategy and goals to help achieve this. Secondly, all firms have taken action to develop their cultural competence in Te Ao Māori. Thirdly, we have built relationships in the education sector to inspire underrepresented groups to see a future in our professions. Number 4, we attract and retain talent by embedding diversity and inclusion best practice in everything we do. 5, we close the gender pay equity gap to within 1%. And 6, we champion the cause and grow our movement by 20%. What are we focusing on over the coming year? We'll be tackling some of the biggest barriers to inclusion and equity. Our industry impact report highlighted the work we still need to do to increase participation of Māori or our Indigenous people, which is currently at 2.4%, Pacific people, which is 2.1%, and women in leadership, which is 29.67%. We're addressing the fact that nearly 40% of the workforce are reported to be neurodivergent, and yet we're still operating in neurotypical work practices. But we recently reflected as a steering group, have we made an impact on the key issue of gender diversity that we faced when we started in 2018? We don't think we've done enough. Currently, for every woman that gets promoted into a director role, 2 women leave the industry. So we'll be addressing women in retention in the workforce by ensuring they're role models. You can't be what you can't see. We'll be encouraging our member organisations to sign up to targets in executive and senior leadership roles. We'll be advocating central and local government procurement agencies for gender diversity on project boards and in senior leadership roles on project teams. We'll be encouraging equal workforce participation opportunities through toolkits for flexible work policies for all staff, parental leave policies for all staff, regardless of gender or parental role, support for returnships for those returning to the workforce after being away for some time. And we still have work to do to close the gender pay gap. The gender pay equity gap as well in our professions is sitting at 5.5%. We're influencing all industry leaders to look at people in like-for-like roles and close the pay equity gap. It's that simple. We believe that with a step change in gender diversity, it sets the foundation from which we can drive equity and inclusion for every diverse group, so that the communities, the infrastructure, the world we shape is as diverse and inspiring as the people in it. We have a lot to do, but we can't stop now. This isn't and shouldn't be about us. This is about our daughters, our sons, our family and whānau, This is about the future generations coming through, the sustainability of our sector. It's about Aotearoa, New Zealand, and it's about the world. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the diversity agenda story and our journey to inclusion. With the support of the industry and these global networks, we know we'll get there. Together, we can achieve great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. I think your comment when you mentioned for every person we get into management, we lose 2 females is really alarming. So very happy to hear that you're looking into that. Thank you so much. So we're going to move on to Natalie. And after Natalie, we're going to do a quick poll. Natalie, over to you.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me here. I truly appreciate the opportunity to talk about something I truly care about. My name is Natalie Plummer. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Bentley Systems. So much of what Josie has said resonates with what our plans are and what my goal has always been. Just to give you a little background about myself, I started my career as a prosecutor in the Domestic Violence, Sex Crimes, and Child Abuse Unit. So I am an advocate at heart. I work very hard for the little guy. So I think it was a perfect transition in doing diversity work. And the way my job even came about was Bentley's recognition and listening to the colleagues about what they wanted. So the creation of my position was as a result of the colleague demand based on some racial injustices that were going on in the United States. And from that, we have developed a strategic plan to make sure all of our colleagues feel that they have a safe space, that they belong, that they are included, and that they have a voice. Now, one of the things that I find so important about the work we're all doing is recognizing that younger generation. Myself, I'm a daughter of I'm the mother of a 14-year-old. So my concern and my thought process is always about what is the world she's going to face when she enters the workforce, and how can I make that better? And what are my goals to try and make it better for all of our children in the future? And part of that begins with figuring out what we can do to help our industries become more diverse and inclusive. And I'll give some credit to the younger generation. They are demanding it. So they have a lot of courage in a way that maybe we didn't necessarily have that much courage, but I'm so proud of what this younger generation is demanding. And that takes me to my first point of why being a diverse and inclusive workforce is an imperative. It is no longer an elective, because this younger generation of employees with these new ideas and innovations and that are going to take us all to the next level, they are looking at the boards of directors. They are looking at if you have an organization that aligns with their ideals. They care about where they work, and they want to represent where they work proudly. No one wants to be the unicorn anymore. And what I mean by that is no one wants to be the only in the organization. In my time as an attorney, there were some times I was the only female in the room, the only Black person in the room. I can remember one time working as an attorney in a firm, and they had a golf outing, and they thought I was one of the cart girls. So no longer do we want to be in a place where we are the only one. We want to make sure we're creating environments where young people and those new ideas and new innovations will be attracted and want to work with our organizations, and also take our organizations and bring new ideas that we've never thought about. When I think about what our strategic plan should be, there are things that you have to recognize, and I think about it in 5 points: educate, recruit, retention, promotion, and the C-suite. And what I mean by that is educating our colleagues about areas and ideas that they never would have thought of before. Having groups that have differing ideas but are open to learning about each other, and being culturally competent enough to recognize what we don't know and what we have to lean into and find out more about in a curious and open manner. And I'll give you an example. One of our global groups we recently formed was our India group. And initially, the thought was, okay, we'll just, ingratiate them with all the other groups we had. But part of cultural competence is recognizing the specific needs of a specific region and recognizing everything can't come from one point of view. You have to be open enough and willing enough to learn that other people have different issues, other people have different perspectives, and they are to be celebrated. And how can you support them in putting forth what their needs are, in figuring out how they want to progress, what is best, and based on specifically what is going on in their region. And that's part of under the umbrella of educate. How can we educate each other about things that would have never occurred to me? At Bentley, we have some amazing employee resource groups and affinity groups that have enlightened me in ways I would have never thought of. And here's the reason and the importance for that is because once you educate someone and once you educate groups, we're opening our minds. You don't have to agree with everything, but what you do have to do, and what I do want, is for everyone to create a space where we can share some ideas, have some tough conversations. So when you come to work, you're engaged because you have found some people who have similar beliefs, but you're also learning about some things that are different. And that's important because you need to set that groundwork, because when we go out and recruit, they are looking at the diversity within organizations. It is a requirement. It is no longer an option. And there is nothing worse than being recruited. You get back to the organization and you are the only one. So part of building a culturally competent foundation is educating all of our groups about each other. Then we recruit, and that also goes towards retention. Retention is where you have put in your time, you have put in your effort, you've recruited this amazing person, but for reasons outside of work, i.e. they feel alone, i.e. they can't connect with someone, i.e. there is no one to ask when they have questions, they're not going to stay. This younger generation, not to generalize, but they are not staying where they do not feel included and welcome. And once you have set up that foundation, you have recruited them, you are retaining people, how do we set them on a track to promote? The statistics are there, and they've spoken about that for every female leader we get to leave. How do we change that paradigm? How do we support that? How do we keep and establish the pipelines to get more neurodiverse people in, to get more women in, to get more people of color, to get more members of the LGBTQIA community? By establishing those pipelines, and we have laid a good foundation, Bentley is setting it up where we want to get the best and the brightest, and we want them to stay, and we want to promote them, and then we want to get them to the C-suite, because I think that is the answer of how you change that disparity, how you change the momentum, and how you increase the momentum to make sure that we are creating a space where our colleagues who are already here want to come to work and feel engaged, but how we are creating a space where people who have a lot of options will say, we want to come and stay at this organization because we recognize that their ideals are aligned with ours in that they support creating an inclusive workspace. And that's the goal. The goal is to create a space where people come and give their best ideas because they feel supported. Not, again, that we agree on everything, but that you are in a place where you can express your ideas appropriately at work, and that you are being listened to, and that you feel that you have a sense of community. That is the goal with making sure that we are doing it right. That should be the goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure we are listening to the people, our colleagues, our friends, to make sure we're creating a safe space for them to come and do their work. but also to educate each other and create a place where we all want to stay and we all want to talk, and we meet some people we never thought we would meet, and we learn some things that would have never occurred to us. I can count the numerous programs I've attended that we have put on where, as an African-American woman, an able-bodied African-American woman, there are so many things that I did not realize about the disabled community. There are so many things I didn't realize about the veteran community, one of our groups. There's so much I'm learning about our global group, our India group. So I think as far as creating a plan, I think the way we do it is by educating each other, recruiting, retention, promotion, and then getting people to the C-suite. I think this is the way we're going to do it. I think I'm so proud to be on this amazing panel with all these, great leaders and talk about some of the issues that I think can really improve our organizations, our business model, and our society in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Apologies, I had to find the mute button there. It's always gets away from us. So thank you so much for that. I think one of the messages that's definitely coming through is we need to get these people, retain them, and get them in the C-suite. And again, at the end of the day, if you're going to be investing all this time and effort into these people, we all know how much money it takes to recruit and then lose someone and replace them. So support is so, so important. Thank you so much, Natalie. So we're going to go over to our poll. If I can ask Bia, our team leader, to switch to the poll for us. And here we just want to get the feedback from you to think, do you think that improving diversity, equity, and inclusion is beneficial to your company and its business? So all you need to know from you, yes or no. So just for your information, we've been running the same question for quite a while. And what we're trying to see here is, are we seeing some movement on the needle? So if you can please complete this question. Do you think improving diversity, equity, and inclusion is beneficial to your company and its business? So in other words, are you seeing any benefits in your team and in your company? Just going to give you a minute to look at that, and we're going to, in a minute's time, have some feedback. Do you think improving diversity, equity, and inclusion is beneficial to your company and its business? Bia, do you think we're able to see the results of our survey? Okay, fantastic. So we have 100%. Can I just tell you that's a fantastic result, because in previous years, we have had people who were honest in their response, which we appreciate, to say, as far as they've seen, it really hasn't been beneficial. So can I just say I'm thrilled with that answer. Just a comment I want to make, and I didn't want to make it before we go on to the next speaker, is at the end of the day, it's also starting to move the needle with our clients, right? Our clients are starting to require that we actually add our diversity, equity, inclusion statistics in order to tender. So it might no longer be just a nice to have, but a must have. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Natalie. Athena, over to you.
Hello everybody, my name is Athena Sooklall and I'm based here in Australia, and our traditions here always start with acknowledgement of country. So I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to the elders both past and present. So earlier, Michele mentioned that I've worked in a few countries, and recently here in Sydney as a major project executive, and before that in Peru. My area of expertise is bringing together multi-company project teams. Now, what that means is that you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 different companies working together to deliver a project. And fundamentally, what that means is that we have got multiple business cultures coming together. Businesses coming together that have got individuals from different parts of the world. We might have one company that is going to bring in people from England and from Spain. We might have another company that's tapping into India. We might have another company that is actually providing sole people of 1, 2, or 3 versus 100 people coming to deliver that project. When you're going to deliver those projects, you need to consider the process, governance, the local law, and the implications to the policy. And for me personally, it's very important that we think as a collective how we are going to deliver that project. Because I've found that there are going to be problems on the project with our people if we don't establish our shared mission and purpose. And the way that you do that is by looking at actually all your usual operational things, such as policy. And I'll give you an example. A common policy that you'll have is sexual harassment and bullying. If you ask for all those companies to provide you with their policy, you will see that they are not consistent. You may have, very simply, 1 page. You might have something that's 6 pages. You will have something that tells you about the approach of how that company will ensure that there are repercussions to poor behaviour. And I've had situations where in a sexual harassment policy, sexual harassment has not been mentioned. So we need to review all those policies, and we need to make sure that for that project, we are going to have consistent messaging and that everybody on that project is going to work in accordance with our policy. And the way that you do that is that you need strong leadership. You need to make sure that everybody who is going to be working for you is understood and consequently communicate it to everybody in a way that it is accessible. Now, we have to pay attention to what makes the company unique, what makes the project unique, and what makes the individuals unique for it to be a successful project. So you've got to tap into the wealth. As I've traveled around the world, I keep witnessing people wanting to start from scratch. But there is so much good information from different countries that you can build and evolve the information that's there already. I can give you an example that only recently in Australia, it was written that sexual harassment was explicitly banned in the workplace, 2023. Now, that's something to really consider, that most people would not find it acceptable and haven't found it acceptable for a very long time. In the United Kingdom, that act was passed in the 1970s. In Australia, the first round of that was in 1980s, a 10-year gap. And as acts develop, there are addendums. And as there's more awareness and people are understanding things more often, we're getting a higher frequency of addendums, and companies have to keep up and understand those addendums. And not just the companies, the people that are working, those leaders, you need to be responsible for your own learning. Learning, whether it be through podcasts, signing up to newsletters, going to extracurricular events, and then communicating that through your team and bringing it back into your business. to make sure that you're at the front and providing what your people need. You've got to remember that legislation is the basics. We as industry leaders can go further. We can provide what people need because we're going to listen to what our people need. Okay, so, you know, diversity is the composition of the workforce. We have to understand what is the impact on protected characteristics in your workplace, how different pressures and types of projects are going to impact individuals. I think it's important that companies provide training, and training such as how to manage diverse teams. We put people into team management roles and just think that what they've learned on the job is going to be sufficient. Furthermore, I think we need to ensure that people are monitored, they are updated, and that they get consistent training, mentoring, and coaching as they develop their careers. So I just want to go back to something that was said earlier about that we need to look at what we're doing at home as well, because only yesterday did a 3-year-old child at school point at a black little girl and said, "She is not white. I don't want to talk to someone with black skin." This issue is not stopping. So we have to make sure that we are stopping it at home. We're raising our awareness. We're aware of our own biases. We're communicating the right things. Whether it be your family member, the people in your community, you have to be bold. You have to be courageous. You have to advocate. And, you know, we have to be aware that the people that we're working with are going to have their own biases, and we're going to come up against ignorance, and we're going to have things said to us that are not acceptable to us, or you have to ask them, why do you say that? With classics such as like, I don't see race, and it's like, well, for me and for other people, that's because you have the privilege, and we're up against the fact that we do have to think about it. We do have to think what other people are thinking about us and how we act, and that energy to keep pushing forward, to be accepted, to be heard. We have to create the environment, the safe space, so that people are respected, heard, and we can address the issues to make an impact and to push things forward. So that's my starter for today. So thank you for listening. Be courageous, keep speaking up, and yeah, we've got a lot to do.
Thank you, Athena. Thank you so much. Thank you for also providing that shocking example. For me, in this day and age, it's absolutely sad that something like that still happens. So from our side, we're with you, support you, and I hope we're going to fight the fight together. Next person we have on the schedule is Jyothsna. Jyothsna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And our wonderful speakers have already touched upon the most important aspects. But today I want to take you on a journey that spans continents and cultures, a journey that has shaped my perspective on building a diverse and inclusive industry for our beautifully diverse world. My perspective on this topic is, of course, influenced by my unique background, having been born and raised in India, studied and worked in the UK, and now finding myself employed in Denmark and in Norway. I work for infrastructure industry, focusing on railways, These diverse experiences have shaped my understanding of the need for inclusive and diversity in the infrastructure sector. Firstly, let me emphasize on the global nature of the industry. It's a field that knows no boundaries. The projects span continents and cultures. My journey has exposed me to the rich tapestry of global talent that contributes to this industry. So let's begin in the heart of India, my birthplace, a nation where diversity is more than a fact. India's heritage teaches us the value of inclusivity with over a billion population, hundreds of languages, and a multitude of religions, traditions, and cultures. India embodies diversity like few other places on the earth. Growing up in this vibrant mosaic, I learned early on the significance of inclusivity. Harnessing this diversity within the infrastructure sector can lead to projects that are not only technologically advanced, but also sensitive to local customs and needs. And I think this is very important because that is why we built the infrastructure in the first place. India's history is a testament to the power of inclusive infrastructure, from the ancient stepwells to the modern metro system that connects the sprawling cities. However, to harness this power of diversity, we must provide equal opportunities to all, regardless of where they're coming from. India's journey towards this inclusion is, of course, ongoing, addressing the challenges as caste system, gender disparities, and economic inequalities. These hurdles have taught us the importance of empathy and understanding in our quest for a more equitable society. During my time studying and working in the UK, I witnessed the first-hand multiculturalism and global outlook. Back in 2013, I think, I found myself on an unexpected twist where I was invited to be a STEM ambassador at the Big Bang Fair in the UK, and I was working for Atkins. So picture this, I hail from a part of India where engineering and medicine seem to be as common as chai on a rainy day. So for me, STEM ambassador was like a plot on a Bollywood movie. Frankly, I couldn't quite wrap up my mind around the idea of why should we promote science, technology, engineering, and math in a country like UK. But little did I know the educational landscapes were as different as curry and fish and chips. You see, I initially thought maybe we should be advocating some alternative academic routes like arts, literature studies, and so on. But this was a real incredible eye-opener for me. I discovered the nuances and the challenges of promoting STEM in a whole new light, a light I hadn't even known existed. I stood there bridging the cultural gap for myself as well between the two worlds of STEM. Here I was an ambassador of STEM, armed with humor, professionalism, and undeniable charm of being an accidental ambassador, convincing the British students that STEM was indeed the future. During my master's at Imperial College in London, my course mates came from all corners of the globe, each bringing their unique perspective and backgrounds. This experience was not just enriching, it was really transformative. So fast forward to today, I'm employed in Denmark and worked also in Norway, the two Scandinavian countries that celebrated for their progressive EDI policies. Scandinavia's approach emphasizes on social welfare, gender equality, and work-life balance. I'm particularly impressed by the emphasis on sustainability and social responsibility on infrastructure projects. Inclusivity extends beyond just hiring practices. It involves considering environmental and social impacts of our work. It is an inspiring example for me as a young engineer how to integrate diverse voices into infrastructure planning and design while prioritizing sustainability. So EDI isn't just a catchphrase, it's actually a way of life. For instance, policies such as parental leave, which allows both parents to share responsibilities, promote gender equality not only at the workplace but at home. Our previous speaker also mentioned about the importance of why it should all start from home, why we should learn from the surroundings around us. We at SYSTRA Denmark, we are proudly signed the Danish Industry's Diversity Pledge. Our goal is to achieve a balanced gender representation of 40 and 60 in management and on board. On conclusion, building an inclusive and diverse infrastructure industry is not only a matter of social justice, but also a strategic imperative. It's no more a luxury, it is a necessity. It's not just about building inclusive industry. It's not just about the compliances. It's about creating a culture where differences are merely tolerated but celebrated as strengths. This is our collective responsibility to foster an industry that reflects the diversity of the world it serves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. Fantastic. It's amazing to hear your journey coming all the way from India and the road that you've followed, the experiences that you've had. It's amazing, and thank you for sharing those. Can I just encourage everybody to please place your questions in the chat, but to get the questions going, I'm going to ask Josie to follow on from your conversation. You mentioned quite a few, shall we say, measurement targets that you're looking at. Why is it important to measure and track progress, and how best should we communicate this? Josie?
Accountability, I think, is the key thing, right? According to the World Economic Forum's Gender Gap Report 2020, it's going to take 257 years to close the gender pay gap, and that's not okay, right? So that's a result of us continuing to talk about gender diversity, and I'm talking about gender here, but diversity in general, but making really slow changes. If we set goals and measure ourselves and the success of those goals and share this, we will see change. I think that's the critical thing about measuring and tracking progress and communicating that. I mean, be open and honest, share it with the world, share it with your peers, with your competitors, with your clients. You're really just demonstrating, you're holding yourself to account, and and that way you'll want to make progress, right? If you don't talk about it, you can hide it, you can stand behind it, and that's the 257 years.
Josie, I'm going to hook on a question that came from the audience. So from all aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which aspect would you see is the one that's still a struggle that you see and you experience in your area?
Well, I'll keep going back to gender because that's my jam, right? And I've been in the industry for 27 years. I started my journey, obviously when I started, I didn't want to stand out and I wanted to, not kind of raise anything, but looking backwards, I first joined our gender initiative before I had my twins, so that's about 17 years ago, and we were about making change. We could see that the numbers of women leaving the industry in around the 10-year level was earlier and faster than men. And so we wanted to do something about it. And I've got to say that, since that time, it's still a real challenge. So, I'm committing to myself before I retire, which sounds like a long time away, but it's not really. That I'm adamant that our society reflects our population, reflects our businesses, and to do that, I think I'm going to start with gender because I can influence that probably the most. But I do think that's a foundation that all diversity can kind of build on from there.
Thank you so much, Josie. So the next question is going to be for Natalie. So Natalie, you've mentioned that you're part of Bentley, obviously very, very digital world, right? So in your view, what simple steps could be made by companies, possibly even companies like yourself, like Bentley, who's so digital, to help in diversity in the industry?
I think one of the things that we have already started doing is establishing these pipelines. And when I talk about pipelines, it is trying to reach out to those underrepresented groups in this who are not really highly represented in this industry. So what we've been doing is establishing pipelines, reaching back to those communities that have been left behind. That includes neurodiversity, that includes people of color, that includes women, that includes the LGBTQI community. So our goal is this. Our goal is to create a pipeline through reaching kids at the youngest level, going to elementary schools and high schools, and to Josie's point, getting them excited about it, and then keeping them involved. So getting them excited, elementary, junior high school. We had an internship here for inner city kids in Philadelphia, getting that internship so they get to know the industry and they get to know it in an exciting way, and then follow them through college. Because not only do we want them to know about Bentley in general and the work we're doing, but we want them to know about this industry. And it's one of the things I say all the time, you don't know what you don't know. And if you've never been exposed to it, you wouldn't know. You know, I'm a first generation student. My parents did not finish college. So a lot of the things that I've had to learn, sometimes a trial and error. Sometimes I get a mentor and they help, but some of it is figuring it out. My parents are brilliant, but navigating the corporate world and navigating this specific industry is something a little bit different. So I think the answer to some of these questions is a sustainable answer. Let me use that word. Sustainable answer is establishing those pipelines so people keep being interested, because I would have loved to grow up in a world where doctors and engineers were common. That was not my world. So it just was a different world. So if we can establish these pipelines to get the kids interested and excited now, even if they don't necessarily go into this field, they'll be excited about learning. And then those who do go into the field, they will have that excitement. They will come with their new ideas, the new innovations, and they will do amazing things like all of these people in the panel. And that will include women who will say, you know what, you have to pay me what my counterparts get paid. You know, what I love about the pipelines we're developing and working with the younger people, they are bold in a way that I find so inspiring and so exciting. And that's what I want. That's how we improve what we're doing, is creating those pipelines to improve the technology, to improve people's access to technology, and improve what they can get to.
Something I'm also going to add on for you is you mentioned neurodiversity a few times now. It's something the council's looking at as well. Could you share with the audience exactly what that is and your views on that?
I don't understand the question.
What is neurodiversity? I think some of the audience.
I apologize. Neurodiversity. When we call neurodiversity is anyone on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, that might be Asperger's, autism, and it comes in such a wide umbrella. It could include ADHD, attention deficit disorder, attention hyperdeficit disorder. It could include that whole umbrella of things. And I'll give you a perfect example. I don't want to take up too much time, but I have so many stories. So what we have learned is, in this remote world we live in now, if there's one benefit we can take away from the pandemic, is that we don't need to stick to a 9-to-5 model. We have the technology. So if someone is neurodiverse and maybe their working schedule can't be from 9 to 5, but they might be from 10 to 8, or they might be from 3 a.m. to whatever time, it doesn't matter. We're a global world now. Look at who I'm talking to right now. This is amazing. We do not have to be limited by our 9-to-5 model. We are only limited by our vision and what we can do. And what that means is there can be a place for everyone. Neurodiversity is a superpower once you have figured out what that superpower is and how to apply it. So our goal is to figure out how we can best make sure everyone is contributing the best they can. So neurodiversity is something that we have done a lot of programs on. on. We have done pipelines to get more people into the industry, to get more people into Bentley. But it is an amazing thing when everyone recognizes there is room for you. We have a place for you. You're not only just welcome or tolerated, we want you. We want all those new ideas. And I think that's the difference. No one wants to just be tolerated. We actively want you where we are, because the next great innovation idea is going to come from a market that has been ignored. And that market that has been ignored, that is a business imperative, because that's money. That is a whole market of people that have been ignored, and that technology, they can use technology to serve them, and that helps our business model as well.
Thank you so much. I like that superpower. You know, neurodiversity could be a superpower. Fantastic.
It is.
Athena, I'm going to come to you next. Why do safe workplaces encourage diversity?
Well, safe workplaces are very much needed so that energy is not wasted. Energy is utilized to do what people need to do as part of their job and flourish. Because if you're thinking about, well, why is that person thinking about me because of my protected characteristics? If they're thinking about, something's happened to you. So say, there's a difference between harassment and bullying. Harassment can be a one-off incident. Bullying is often recognized as repeated incidents. It impacts people's well-being, and they shrink, they change, they try to adapt to the situation. We need to have safe environments so people can speak out, talk about what's not tolerated. Don't let groupthink overtake something and create something that is not okay. And by doing so, you also are raising awareness about issues, educating people, and become an accepted group of people. So for me, safe spaces really allows people to come to work, be themselves, be authentic, be genuine, and have a really great workplace. But you have to actively create a safe workspace.
So Athena, I'm going to hook on to that to say, like, how do we measure this impact of the effectiveness of diversity, equity, and inclusion? We've got a question from the audience. Like, how do we? You've now indicated what happens. People come into themselves. They're not that open. So how do we measure it when we are successful?
I think there's different ways to measure it. I think retention is one. I think people have got a limit and they will walk out. I think managing talent is really important, because especially women, we talk about often the number of bullet points on roles and responsibilities, and that women are putting themselves forward for that because they think, oh, I can't do 100%. But you know why? That's because women do 100% of that job role. They will overperform over and over again. Their counterparts who are going for that role, we're like, when they say, I can only do 60% of that role, they'll only do 60% of that role. I know so many women that have got many qualifications. I've got 2 charterships. I've got friends who are, and colleagues who've got masters in construction law, MBAs. They're like doing like human resource policy because they're engineers, but they really care about this subject matter, and they need to push the agenda forward. So retention, career progression, seeing people do well, and I think, and seeing people do well is a consequence of talent management. You can't just have a target. I need to have 3 women in leadership. once they're in and people get their bonuses, you've got to have a plan for them to be successful. Don't leave them. Make sure the people who have hired them know how to manage amazing women. Otherwise, again, they will just shrink and wonder what on earth they're doing. So there's a lot of talent out there, and we have to enable people to really reach their potential, but you have to train people, and you have to be have open communication and safe spaces. You have to have the role models, and you have to have people speaking up and out. But do not create martyr syndromes, okay, where people speak up and then they end up being held back because they were brave enough to advocate for the people.
Absolutely. You mentioned training. Any examples of training that you think would be helpful either for the people being put in this position? And once again, it's not necessarily just females, but people of all aspects of diversity. What type of training would you recommend?
I think an easy one there is unconscious bias training. We all have biases. You know, when I talk about culture, not just the individual person's culture, that you've got country, region, office, team, discipline, all of those have got cultures in themselves without even going into what makes that person unique. Another one, I will say again, you know, because we need to make people very aware of the policies that we have in place so that managers can actually offer those. Everybody needs to read your policy, your company policies, and then talk about what's missing and talk about what we need. You know, sexual harassment is another way. You know, I keep talking about it because it's a real problem. People aren't acknowledging this issue. It's not just happening to women. In Australia, 2 in 5 women are sexually harassed. 1 in 4 men are sexually harassed. Okay? It's happening everywhere. And then you've got sex discrimination. And understanding, well, what is sexual harassment? Because people have an idea of what it is. But if you look at your policy, actually, it's there. It's you know, there's information there. But as I saw, when I compared all those policies across all those companies, there are shortcomings. And then there's some very detailed one. I mean, as a leader, I took all that and I communicated it. If people like saying to me, why are you telling us this? I'm like, because you need to know. And it's my role to make sure that everyone on my team is safe and they know what to do. And I went through all the policies like that.
100%. So it's very important to know what is in your policy and what can be enforced and what's the gap in the policy. So we've got lots of claps in the chat, by the way, for that one. Jyothsna, I'm going to ask you, why do you think that there is such a strong focus and emphasis on equity, diversity, and inclusion in Scandinavia?
I think there is a growing recognition that diverse and inclusive workplaces and societies are more innovative, productive, and economically successful. So Scandinavian countries with their strong economies are keen to leverage on these benefits as well. And the social fabric itself with the policies that they have in place, for example, like I told you about the parental policies and the work-life balance, they somehow integrate this all, they stitch this all together. And in terms of governments, they have implemented, like policies and legislations to promote EDI in every aspect of work. We have projects that are inclusive design approach for all people, even for disabled, for wheelchair access. So we start talking to the organizations even when we are planning and designing this. So I think it's more because of the economic aspects and also how the country or how the economy is set up in a place.
So you've had a really interesting life experience where you've seen very different economies, various levels of service. So one of the questions in the chat is your view on how equity affects infrastructure development. So you've had an amazing view on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think when we have multiple perspectives to be considered, I think it's also a challenge, but it should be seen as, you know, getting innovative solutions in place. So I think we have to be open in terms of getting the ideas in, and not just even from all aspects, from juniors to the senior management. So it's really important that everybody is heard. So if you create a workspace that is more inclusive, the ideas can be generated. You can shift from group thinking to more innovative thinking, and you can actually, for example, come up with something that nobody has ever thought of. And the way of doing things that, I mean, sometimes, okay, I'm coming from a railway background, so and this is changing daily, and a lot of practices in our industry are age old. For example, Bentley is changing softwares every now and then. So how you are going to train your staff? So provide with training, and provide with you know, your voices being heard. And I think in one of the projects that we have been working on, we have different teams that are working. So make them comfortable, because sometimes they feel, okay, if I speak today, maybe somebody will think I'm stupid. So firstly, you should make people comfortable by saying there's no as such as a stupid question here. And I think this is the way we can actually work with, yeah, different ideas, different sets of age groups, and we should work on unconscious bias, because, okay, she's or he is from this place, and that is why he is like this. This is something we should come out of it. And maybe she's coming or he's coming from a different place, but can have brilliant ideas. And that's where we have to leverage on those ideas, I think.
I'm going to add another aspect, and you know, Jyothsna, you are on the fire line, but I welcome all the speakers to respond to this. Is something I recently experienced is taking on board, like for example, very experienced specialists or people who are retired who can still add value, but we really hit the wall with technology, where these people struggle to use Microsoft Teams, they struggle to use SharePoint. Your comments on those and how the young people can actually also support in this aspect.
I think, you know, at the Association of Consulting and Engineering, Rebecca Wooding was the vice chair, and she produced something called reverse mentoring. Working with Mark McDonald, they did a pilot scheme, and this is online on the AC website that everybody can access and read about the structure that was implemented and the results. And what this is basically the emerging professional, the younger person, is the mentor, and the mentee is the older person. And you can ask, it's a confidential environment, you can ask your questions in confidence, and then the mentor answers those questions. And whether it started off with the digital transformation. It started off with, how do I make the most of my phone with all these apps? How can I be more effective? How can I have meetings on the go? And I think as well, I myself, sometimes I need an emerging professional to come and sit next to me on my computer and just show me something. And often it's just having a go and doing it once. Once you do it once, you know, it's kind of that, you know, you don't want to have the shame that it's like, oh gosh, I should know. I don't know. I've got to ask. And if you have to ask again, it's okay. You're learning. That's the culture we want to create, a learning, curious, effective culture. To ask, don't have no shame. Yeah.
100%. I'm going to quickly jump over to Natalie. One of the questions on from the audience is, how do we promote these champions of change? So obviously you've been identified by Bentley as a champion of change. How are you supported, and how can we roll this out in the consulting engineering industry?
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that I think all of us have touched on the support really has to come from your organization all the way from the top. And it has to be ingratiated in everything that you do. To be an agent of change, you definitely need the leaders in the organization to sign on, the directors to sign on, management to sign on to make a difference. Because, you know, it can start from the colleagues. My position is based on colleague demand, so I can attest it can start from the colleagues, but you have got to have that buy-in from the upper management to make sure that they're supporting. You know, I think one of the things Bentley does really well is I have the support of the upper management. They want to know what the colleagues are thinking. They want to support their colleagues. So as far as driving change, how do we support the drive for change? It's really got to start from the upper management. And then you've got to come up with a plan that has strategic goals that you're trying to reach and is sustainable. Nobody wants a one and done program where you're just kind of throwing random things at the wall and hoping they stick. You've got to have a sustainable plan. And how do you do that? And you can only do that with the upper management support. You know, one of the things that I think that we've all got to recognize, and I want us to get away from in all of our industries as far as driving change is this scarcity mindset, where if this person gets some, I won't get some. Or if this woman gets a promotion, then I won't get a promotion. And she stole my promotion. It is a fallacy. It is false. I rail against this so much. There is room for all of us. As we create more new innovations, as we create new ideas, we can broaden the table. We don't have to be fighting for the 2 seats at the table. Create a bigger table. There are new things we didn't even have all of this stuff. Like, you know, I remember now how all the kids have a cell phone. I was doing dial-up. I was doing with the dial-up. I remember that. I remember before cell phones, there were beepers. There is room. There are new ideas coming. So this scarcity mindset, which makes us say, well, I don't want to promote her because she took his position, or I don't want to promote this person. It's a fallacy. And once we really understand that, you'll understand that there's room for all of us. And that's how you drive change. Once you have that understanding that you can say, you know what? There is room for new inventions coming that we haven't even thought of 20 years from now. The things we're doing now, back in the 80s, back in the 70s when I was born, we didn't even think about these things. Now I'm having a meeting with amazing global colleagues. There is no way little Natalie from Brooklyn, New York would ever picture I would be here. There's absolutely no way in the world. I'm talking to some brilliant, inspiring women across the globe. So there is room for all of us. The scarcity mindset is a lie.
I just want to support that. I love it. There's room for all of us. One of the ways in Africa, sometimes they describe it, they say, okay, we only have this much of a cake and it's my time to eat. Where if you just change your mind and say, but can't we grow the cake and then everybody can eat and everybody has something to offer? At the end of the day, when you look at what synergy is, synergy means not a bunch of mini-me Michelles, not a bunch of mini-me Natalies or anybody. At the end of the day, if we all collaborate, synergy allows us to grow the cake. Jyothsna, I saw you had your hand up there.
I just wanted to add up, growing up, sometimes we are told life is a race. And actually, it's not always about winning or one person winning. I think how we can win is by getting our community together or our teams together. And if this is the mindset that we foster in terms of creating this culture, that it's not about winning the race, it's about collaborative efforts to get in together.
Yeah.
And that is also with EDI. I think it's the culture that we need to build up. We cannot force someone to do something because then they would just do because they have a promotion, or they would just do because their KPIs are ticking or something like this. And that is why the leadership needs to kind of slowly build this culture. And this is why I think we should start from home. because we learn, we see our parents, or we see the kids look at their parents to see, okay, this is how it works and this is how we are going to do it. So somehow our unconscious habits, our unconscious biases should be tackled at home before we come to the workplace in the first place, I feel. So that's something I wanted to add on.
100%. Josie, do you want to maybe add to this social aspect as well?
I think it's all been covered, to be honest. Like, yeah, great stuff said by everybody else. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think maybe at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest outcomes that we have here is the fact that there are multiple aspects that you look at. So you can have certain KPIs that you want to reach. You can have certain bonuses attached to that, but that's not enough. What has to follow is support, equity versus equality. And for those who might not be aware of the definition, you can put two people on the same height of a box. But if you want both of them to be able to succeed, it's not always a bad idea to have the short person be put on another box so that they can see over the fence, right? So at the end of the day, if we can have equality, equity, everything included, I look forward to us as a collective of the consulting engineering industry to grow the cake. We can even have a hashtag grow the cake, whatever the case may be, because that includes everyone. That includes belonging. That includes collaboration, innovation, everything that we've spoken about. So thank you, ladies. I'm going to go over to the next aspect of the webinar. We're going to launch the next poll. Bia, if you can assist us here to launch the next poll. And please, if you still have any questions, you're welcome to add them to the chat, things that we can discuss later on or part of the diversity, equity, inclusion. So the question 2 is, what topics do you believe that our Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Advisory Council should focus on the future? And you can add multiple aspects here. We're currently working on a guideline. Is that something that you want us to specifically focus on? We are looking at that. Would you like to see some case studies from all around the world? Are there particular policies you want us to review? Because just so that you know, we do have a equity, diversity, and inclusion policy for FIDIC at the moment, similar to that the one they had for COVID. But of course, it might be more practical tools and resources to improve diversity. Again, some people have advanced quite far in accomplishing what needs to be accomplished, and it's good to know what practical tools have they used and what works. Would you like to see more webinars like this, where we can have open discussions, pick people's brains, and just talk about the aspects? Very important. I just want to use this opportunity to mention that there is something called the FIDIC Academy, who's currently looking at equity, diversity, and inclusion training. So if that's an aspect you want us to look at, very happy to take that forward. Right now, we are working with the Academy to have something that's very useful, but very easy to digest. So not an extensive piece of training, more digestible, short, and then of course, best practice sharing. So very happy for you to add them, more than one, very happy to look at that. And you'll see that we have a post in the chat where you can learn more about the FIDIC Academy as well. So from my side, I just want to say thank you so much to all the speakers. We had fantastic interactions. There's a lot already that I've seen here today that I want to go look at the recording again and take that on. So fantastic. We've had good feedback, guidelines, case studies, practical tools seems to be the one that a lot of people are looking into, and then best practice sharing. Happy to support that. So this helps the FIDIC Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council with a clear vision of what you as the audience wants to see, and very, very chuffed with this response. Thank you so much. Okay, then I'm going to hand over back to Nelson. Nelson, thank you so much. I'm still on mute. Nelson, you still with us? You're on mute, Nelson. Sorry, Nelson, the sound's not coming through. I don't know if it's from my side or your side. Ladies, can you hear Nelson? Okay. We seem to have an issue with your sound, Nelson. Not sure if you... there we go. Go ahead. No. Technology keeps us humble, I think. Okay. We still have some audio issues. I think, Bia, maybe if you can bring the slides up, I can, from my side, just do the closing remarks. Okay, so going forward, Nelson just wanted to speak to you about the next upcoming webinar, which is the 26th of October, the FIDIC State of the World report and everything that's covered there, the official contract users conference, which is taking place on the 28th to the 29th of November in the UK, and the webinar series. Go ahead, Nelson, let's try again. No, we still can't hear you. And then the webinar series, the next one being the FIDIC Sustainable Development Committee webinar, which is the next in series. Nelson? Oh, not the best, Nelson. Still an issue.
Okay.
Sorry, Nelson, it's still a problem. Apologies from head office side. Okay. Congratulations to all of the speakers. We want to thank you so much for your time. It's been an excellent discussion. And then looking forward next year, we'll obviously be doing our next diversity, equity, inclusion webinar. But one of the questions that came up on the chat I also saw is, how can I be involved? So if you just go to the FIDIC website, you'll see there is a link to the diversity, equity, inclusion. Please express your expression of interest if you want to be part of the committee. We also have task teams that contribute to the committee. Please, if you can share your expression of interest there, or if you want to drop something in the chat to say you want to be part of what we're trying to do. So thank you so much to everyone. Had a fantastic day today. And Nelson, apologies for your sound there, but it's been amazing. And there you can see Nadia dropped in the chat further information about the council. From my side, I just also want to say thanks once again to the board. We have new board members representing diversity, equity, inclusion, and I saw Prashant Kapila in the webinar today. Happy to have him part of the team again, and looking forward to everything that we hope to achieve. Thank you so much.